anytime you're doing satire, it's also tricky. I mean, it's a really hard genre to nail because you're kind of observing something from the outside in. I didn't make my job easy, and I have no idea if I succeeded, but I think that I do love films that have a sense of humor about something that's going on that's otherwise kind of too dark to just look at without some candy-coated glam going on.
Meredith Alloway, welcome to Underexposed. Great to have you.
Thank you so much for reaching out. I'm stoked to be here.
I saw this movie a few weeks ago. I love it so much. It's so wild and fun and enjoyable, but I don't want to spoil too much. So I wonder if, for those who haven't seen Forbidden Fruits, if you could just kind of tease what it's about.
Basically, it's about these women who are all named after fruits who work at a mall in Dallas. And they need to hire someone new. And they meet the new girl who's working at Sister Salt's, an Auntie Anne's type pretzel spot. And they sort of bring her into the store for Eden that they work at. Come to find out, they also run like a witchy coven after hours. And she starts to peel back the layers of their sisterhood and sort of starts to see the secrets and the lies, and she has her own secret. So it all sort of unravels into chaos in the last act of the movie.
I want to ask about the origins of this. I mean, Lily Houghton wrote a play a number of years ago that
Mhm.
this is an expansion of, and you co-wrote this together. What was that development
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, I mean, when I read Lily's play of the woman came the beginning of sin and through her we all die, it's a mouthful. What I loved about it was it really is about the multitudes in female relationships and those dynamics. And, I think I was also really drawn to the fact that like it's not in relation to a man. It's not, oh, they're arguing because someone stole someone's boyfriend. It really is just about, the sort of roller coaster that can be female relationships. And, when we met, she had sort of said, oh, I'm looking to make this kind of like a campy horror adjacent. And I was like, what if we sort of use body horror and use the slasher genre as a way to sort of help people understand how these characters are feeling, like the beauty, the violence, the joy, the flaws, the successes. I sort of love horror that does that. And so we dove in and wrote on writer duet across from each other most days, and she would take a scene, I would take a scene, and make each other laugh was kind of the guiding light. Yeah, it was such a fun process. I mean, no one dies in the play. Someone steals a baby pink thong and there's like a mutiny. They're named after flowers in the play, which in the movie there's sort of an homage to at the very end. But we had fun kind of turning up the dial.
Hmm. And you had help from an amazing producer, Diablo Cody, who came aboard after apparently hearing you two pitch the project, and she called the project one of the most, the pitch rather, one of the most imaginative and magical pitches she's ever heard, which is high praise, I imagine. Do you remember? What do you remember
Right.
about that pitch and what Diablo brought to this production as a producer?
Yeah. I mean, Diablo's been like such a hero of Mia Lily's, and I think that, she has quite literally paved the way for movies like this to get made. With Juno and Mason Novick, her producing partner as well, and Jennifer's Body. We pitched like 40 producers. And this was towards the ends of the process, and we were like, man, like nothing is really clicking. You really for a movie this wacky, like I know how crazy this movie is. Like, like sometimes I'm like showing my friends, I'm like, guys, like I know this is insane. Like, who let us make this? You really want someone that got it, and we pitched her and Mason kind of late in the process, and just like the sort of things that she brought up about the themes, she was one of the people that was like the confessionals, are part of the play. And they sort of do it like a soliloquy where they confess to the audience. And, we were sort of like, how do we translate that cinematically? And she was like, whatever you do, just don't sacrifice them. First thing in a script, someone's like, cut the long monologues, and she was like, don't, preserve that. And to me, those moments are the heart of all of these characters, and I remember we got off the call and we were like, we'll never, this will never. And pretty quickly we heard they wanted to do it. And I have like a screenshot of a FaceTime of me and Lily like crying, on FaceTime, just being like, what? It's beyond our wildest. But I think just like Diablo and Mason have this isn't their first rodeo, and they were such mentors throughout, even from who we were working with, from a financing standpoint and a studio standpoint, to just fight for the integrity of the project and what we really wanted to say. And then, down to some one-liners that Diablo would throw our way, and a couple made it into the film. So yeah, it was a dream come true working with her.
Well, the cast is absolutely incredible. How did you put together these four principal roles?
Yeah, I mean, it really started with the apple of it all because she's what you could say is the queen bee, and we really wanted to find our apple and build out from there. But I also like am such a fan of like all of these women, and had sort of an idea of in my mind, who I wanted these characters to be. But I think Lily Houghton, who was involved in the casting process, which was great to have your sort of right-hand person there alongside you, your partner in crime, you can go, how was that meeting? We met with a lot of actresses. It was an embarrassment of riches. And, I think when we met Lily, we like to say she kind of went full Apple in the meeting. She wore like a little cunty black cardigan. And we get off the call, and Lily and I were like, Houghton, we were like, we're kind of scared of her. She's perfect, and Lily already was like embodying and bringing her sort of take on Apple, which is this sort of woman who needs to control and she is perfection, and of course as you peel back the layers on Apple, you realize she is by no means a perfect person at all, and she's hiding sort of her own flaws from women. I think that really Lily brought a lot of ethos to that character, and Victoria, such a fan of her. And we've seen her play these like tragic sort of scream queens in Honeyfield House and I was like, but I see her find levity and humor in things, and when she smiles she sort of lights up, and that really was Cherry, this sort of modern Bridget Bardot, Marilyn Monroe, and she just fully transformed for that part. There's just so many like outtakes of like improvised lines. Like she has one line that says like they look like little shits. These little pretzel moment that I love. And Alex Ship, when we met her, we were like, oh my God, she is so in the world of this movie. And Fig is kind of a tricky part because she is a scientist and loves Ed Sheeran and yet somehow fits into the coven. And Alex, when we met her, she's so goofy, but also so wise. And we were like, oh, I think her energy really like ties that character together in a way. And Lola, Summer I Turned Pretty, such a fan of the show. But, when we met her, I was like, oh, she's a Scorpio. She's got a spiciness to her. I really think that I want to see her do something a little dark. Like she is sort of the innocent, wide-eyed new girl, and then you're like, oh, she's up to something too. So I just like was excited to see all these women play a role we hadn't necessarily seen them do, but I saw like glimmers of those characters in who they are or in their work. And then Emma Chamberlain, what a gift to have her do this movie. And I knew I wanted Pickle to be an outsider. I sort of love casting where you kind of what do people already have an idea of this person just like in existence, and sort of knowing that people don't know Emma for her acting work yet, they will.
Another element of this movie that I think is so amazing is the story world that you build. It's not even one story world. There's like worlds within worlds in this movie, which are so rich. In
Oh,
particular, like
thank
the
you.
restaurant, what is it, Yeast Garden or something like that? Or the restaurant that they go to, it's like there's a whole other culture and something going on in there that's like a governing that space, and like you feel like there's a world behind every door in this mall. To what degree
Thank
did you
you.
guys work out that lore, and how far did you take it outside of Free Eden?
Yeah, I mean, the yeast garden joke, even the sister salts, even the Arizona latte at the end of the movie is a result of pre-pro and legal going. All of the names are taken that are a spin-off of an Olive Garden, and me going, Yeast Garden. I think it was even Steph, maybe our props master, that was like, what are things that have to do with bread? And she was like, yeast. And I was like, oh my God, this is so thank you for noticing because did we have fun printing those menus? We were like, and every coffee name under the sun was taken. At a certain point, I was like, I don't know, call it Arizona latte. And we all started laughing. And I was like, okay, well, that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So I think that I was really lucky. Kiera, our production designer, Jeff, our set deck, Guru, Steph, our props master, we had so much fun just building the world. And I appreciate you noticing because every single choice was specific. Down to, I'm trying to think what other parts of the mall, down to like where Cherry is like hooking up with the food court. I was like, it needs to be a store that feels luxury, but what store is going to let us shoot that scene? And like it really is, it's an indie film. So a lot of it was sort of birthed out of the pre-pro process and going, what can we get away with? What fits the story? And what builds the ecosystem that the girls are living in? I mean, the play is not in a mall. It's in a, unnamed storm that anyone can kind of guess what we're sort of spoofing, that Lily worked at in Union Square. And I was like, but a mall allows us to, like, if we don't have a school, like in Heathers or Mean Girls, like the mall is the ecosystem and allows us to understand how other people view these women and how they view themselves. So, yeah, it was definitely intentional. I appreciate you noticing East Garden. So insane.
Another thing that's noticeable, well, you're a Dallas native, and Dallas seems to loom large over this as well. I know the
Hmm.
original play was set in NYC. I just saw this
Hmm.
Robert Altman movie. You may have seen it, Dr. T and the Women, which,
Hmm.
have you seen
Hmm.
that? And I don't know, just
Oh
having
yeah,
seen it,
yeah, it's
it
crazy.
opens,
Altman
you
was a
may not
huge
remember this, but it
influence.
opens in a mall,
Mhm.
and the fountain in
Oh
the
yeah.
mall, like, really, like, factors into the plot of the movie. Like, right, and
Hmm.
the minute
Hmm.
this movie started, I know you shot it in Toronto, but I did feel what I felt when I was watching Dr. T and the Women. And I'm wondering what other elements, either through costume or dialogue or set design, did you bring to make this authentically a Dallas set production?
Well, I love that you bring up that movie because I'm like, I forgot about that movie. Because I watched Three Women a lot and Long
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye just for like visual influences in Altman, but that movie opens at the mall that we're spoofing, and that fountain is what we like recreated at the mall in Toronto. So I appreciate
Incredible.
you bringing that up because the fountain at that mall is a character in and of itself. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that Dallas growing up there, it is this strange thing because it's in Texas, but it's very metropolitan. So it's like, people are like, you don't have an accent. And I'm like, yeah, but when I go home, I slip back into it. And like I've got certain things like I can get lazy with it. We
Mm-hmm.
worked with a vocal coach, Kate, who's just incredible, who teaches at Juilliard, who sort of did a kind of overhaul meeting where she was like, really, people in Dallas, they say like, men instead of men or win instead of win. But there's little kind of things, and particularly Cherry's character does a lot of it. Victoria, really leaned into that because it really made sense for Cherry. So it was like down to that, but I was like, I don't want them to have these like over the top Texas accents because it's like not really Dallas. And I think too with the fashion, sort of having hat tips, with the cowboy hats, with the boots, and also just going, growing up, like certain friends of mine dressed more Texas than others. I didn't grow up wearing cowboy boots. Some people might think that. It's like, no. I had boots for my country western dance team, and that is very Texas. But I didn't wear them like out and about. But I had friends that did. So I think it was really going with each character, honing in on what is their style, how sort of Texas do they dress. And then I think it was just like the most important thing was Texas is very like tradition based, like ritual based. Like there were like inductions that I had growing up as a woman. Like from my senior and junior year in high school to my senior year, it was like I was a mini me to like my friend, and then you had like senior induction, and like when I was explaining all this to Lily Houghton, she was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like it's very tradition, ritual based." you think it only exists in sororities, and I was experiencing that in high school in my female dynamics, and this sort of want to belong to that ritual and be a part of the sort of nostalgia and history of the women that came before, and that was like a big part of, I think, what the movie is about. Because not everything that they're doing is they're drinking a bunch of crap out of a boot. Like, why? The boot's right here, by the way. I stole
It's
one to
amazing.
in the Jane Does doll on the side. I was like, I got to keep some props for myself. So yeah, I mean, it was down to little things like the number one daddy license plate to deep female relationship sort of themes.
Yeah, I mean it's a cult. It feels like a cult movie in a few ways. Obviously, it sort of deals with this coven cult type structure, hierarchy, but
Hmm.
also aesthetically, it draws on, seems to draw on to me anyway, like kind of what we think of aesthetically as cult movies, like kind of exploitation or B movie kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
wonder,
Hmm.
you can't like cult movies. No movie is born a cult movie, but were you at all like
Hmm.
consciously influenced by cult movies? And are you a fan of any? Are you in any movie cults around any movies that you can share with us?
Oh man. I mean, yeah, there's one that is like looming large behind me, which I will talk about right here. I need to frame this poster. I'm always embarrassed when I do a Zoom. I'm like,
I'm
oh
trying
my
to see what
God.
it says. What is
Um,
it?
it's my own private Idaho. I guess I'll talk
Oh,
about
cool.
that first. I love this movie so much. I've got like sweatshirts. I've got like, basically, you don't think there's a cult until a friend sends you this jacket on eBay that people have found that looks like the jacket River Phoenix wears like in the movie. And like there is like, the Reddit thread that exists that has located the doppelganger jacket, and I had a friend buy me the jacket. I also bought it for myself. So then I had two sizes of the jacket. I gave one to a friend. I was like, oh, I am part of the My Own Private Idaho River Phoenix fan club cult for sure. Um, I think what I love about that movie and like to sort of speak to like, no, I wasn't like consciously like, I want to make a cult classic movie.
Of
Like that would
course.
be like why that's an impossible bar to set, like on yourself. And that's like making a movie being like, I'm gonna win an Academy Award. It's like it's not what it's about. Like you can't control how people are gonna perceive your movie. All you can do is control, to the best of your ability, especially an indie film, the story you're telling. But I think that like to me, My Own Private Idaho, why I love it, it's like so imperfect. Like it's a Shakespearean tale meets like a queer love story meets like a road trip meets like a trauma movie, all cobbled together. And sort of love that because you can watch it, every few years and see something new that you didn't notice before. And I think I love movies like that. I mean, I think like Daisies was a big influence on Forbidden Fruits, and I just got my Criterion Blu-ray and the big Criterion sale, and that kind of feels like, and I think Alamo Drafthouse or one of the big theaters in New York is bringing it back, and I was like, I have to see it. So it is funny how like films are made, and I think to your point, like you can't control what is and what isn't a cult classic, but it is funny how movies somehow tap into the zeitgeist 30 years down the road for whatever reason is happening in society, or cultural trends or whatever. And I think that there are a lot of movies like Jennifer's Body is a perfect example that sort of has circled back because it was tapping into something timeless. And I do love movies like that, that maybe a cult classic is something that is timeless.
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's amazing. So I teach at NYU, and a number of my students.
Oh,
It's crazy
wow.
how many of them bring in scenes from Jennifer's Body. These are kids who were born like
Wow.
you know not that long ago, and they're really into
Yeah.
it. And that's a way I can sort of gauge their
Wow.
taste, but also understand the
Mm.
legacy of some of these films that didn't get an appropriate reaction when they were first released.
Hmm.
And it's
I
so
mean,
exciting to see that.
American Psycho.
Yeah,
Yeah, American
there you go.
Psycho, it's a perfect example of people didn't get that. I mean, it's so crazy reading it was like at Sundance and people are like, "What?" And that was a huge influence on Fruits, like just from a performance perspective too, with the cast. Lola likes to say she saw it for the first time after I was like, go watch it. And then she's like slowly like learning to love horror movies. Because I think she was like, I'm scared. And now she's like, I love them. And they're so fun to be in. But I think that, yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're doing satire, it's also tricky. I mean, it's a really hard genre to nail because you're kind of observing something from the outside in. I didn't make my job easy, and I have no idea if I succeeded, but I think that I do love films that sort of have a sense of humor about something that's going on that's otherwise kind of too dark to just look at without some candy-coated glam going on.
Yeah. Well, I love how ambitious it is and how, in the best way, like you, my own private Idaho, like how cobbled together it feels. Like there are moments that just like
Hmm.
shift tones completely. I won't go into the ending, but the ending being one of
Yeah.
them, one of many. You know, like the button.
Oh,
And suddenly
absolutely.
it's like a
Absolutely.
procedural. You know, it's like it's like of course why not? You know, who cares?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's a lot
Totally,
of fun.
totally.
Okay, I
Hmm.
know we're
Hmm.
going over, so maybe I wanted to ask you real quick about Shutter and how
Hmm.
Shutter
Hmm.
has sort of cultivated, speaking of cult, like a viewership, a sort of brand that a lot of people see
Hmm.
as a mark of
Hmm.
distinction. And I'm wondering what your what the what it was like to work with them on the release of this film.
Yeah, I mean, IFC and Shutter came on really early before we made the movie. We sort of pieced it
Mm,
together with distribution deals and a rebate and, other sort of EPs. And, I think about the movie Revenge, Corley's film that, Shutter acquired. And I remember just seeing the imagery from that plastered across the platform and social
mm,
media. And like, what an incredible movie to get behind. And um, you know, I just feel like they really champion subversive films and also just new voices. It's really hard out there. A lot of people don't want to take risks on that. They don't want to spend the money. And I think that really Shutter and IFC really helped, because they did see cuts of the movie. It wasn't like we were done and then we, just handed it over. They bought it at a festival. So they were very involved in things and really it was an amazing experience to trust the type of movies that they've brought into existence, that they've bought, that they've distributed, filmmakers that they've sort of cocooned their and jet started, is that a word? Jet started their careers.
it is
So
now.
there was a lot of trust there. And even just like the team at IFC, I was a journalist for like a decade. So, a lot of them I had known for years, and that was really special to work with them. But, I think you want a partner who's going to say, hey, like this isn't clear, or like, hey, we know what your intention is, and that's not coming through. And there were a lot of conversations like that. So, yeah, it's an honor to be a part of the Shutter IFC family.